Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Monday, July 14th, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are listening to Coffee. I am JC Shurburtt. I'm happy to be with you today. Hope all of you had a wonderful weekend, and this is kind of the unofficial start of it all. Every single year, SEC Media Days, sort of the unofficial kickoff to football season. Um, in many ways, it was a long off season in Gamecock land with basketball, men's basketball, and baseball not having terrific years. In fact, historically bad seasons record wise. And but we're back. We're back to the sport that Carolina had some success in last year. On the men's side, of course, no disrespect to the women's side of things, but there's a lot of anticipation. This is one of the most anticipated South Carolina football seasons. I think 2018 had some expectations because Carolina was coming off of a 9-4 record that season and came back and had a new offensive coordinator. Jake Bentley was back for his second year as a starter. Man, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? New OC, quarterback back after a promising first year. I don't think. Let's hope this year doesn't go like that year, because that year the defense had lost a lot of players. There you go. There's another similarity. But everybody who was back, like DJ Wanham, stayed hurt that year. I think he only played in 3 or 4 games by the time Clemson got there. Gosh, they were trotting walk-ons left and right out there on the D line. Of course, they gave up about 800 yards that night, and so that was quite a disappointing year. Even though the Gamecocks finished 7-6, there were some bright moments. They were really good on offense that season, but it was from that Georgia game, get week 2, very highly anticipated on. It was a struggle. But like I said, some memorable moments. I mean, nobody will ever forget the Missouri Michael Scarnecchia game, the game at Ole Miss, the shootout out there, coming back against Tennessee, who, kind of the Gamecock sleptwalked a little bit and came back and won that one by 3. And then there's some down times too. I mentioned Georgia. The Kentucky game was bad. A&M got out with a 3-point win after building an early lead. Jimbo Fisher and those tight ends that year. It was, and then the Virginia Bowl game was a disaster. But, let's hope it doesn't go like 2018. 2014 was another disappointing year as far as expectations go, and that was more similar. Nobody was really. South Carolina was picked as like a dark horse to finish second or maybe contend for the East if they could beat Georgia in 2018. 2014, they were talking playoff, and that was that was tough. And I think we all, because I called it a little bit back in 2013 when I looked at the players leaving. It was easier to call back then because you knew who was probably going to go. And then Carolina also had like Kelsey Quarles and Victor Hampton leave early. And you knew coming in, well, these guys could be good. You knew who was on the roster. It was easier to say, after the Georgia game in 2013 that, hey, this group is trending down. And I believe after that game, I got beat up bad on the Big Spur with it. I said, 2014, next year could be one of the worst defenses ever. And it was. And it was a lot of it was personnel. I mean, you kind of look at the I guess measurables of some of those guys on the team. I mean, you're trying to go to battle with a 6'1", 255-pound end and a true freshman back in the secondary and slow corners and less than ideal talent across the board. When you've had, Jadeveon Clowney and Kelsey Quarles and all these guys for years, you're going to take a step back, and that defense was just. And then they melted down at bad times that year too. Did get some stops in the Florida game, and got a big stop against Georgia, and they won those games. I mean, that was a 7-16 with a really good offense. So I don't know, man. I'm like, well, let's hope this isn't similar. But if you just look at South Carolina on paper and you looked at where their losses were, you'd say, well, their defense lost a lot of big time talent. The offense should be good, better, and you're like, oh man. And that is equated to 7-6. Big, expectations plus losses on defense has equaled 7-6. And look, I'll be honest, this team this year could be a really good team and go 7-6. It's the schedule, I believe, in my opinion, is much tougher than 2014 or 2018. I think there's just quality teams up and down the schedule, but there was last season too. Last season, South Carolina, they didn't get the luxury of playing a schedule like Tennessee or Texas. Uh, they both made the playoff. We've talked about that a whole lot. So it's an anticipated year, and I think too, in fairness, and I misspoke earlier. I said Jake Bentley was going into his second season. It was his third. It was actually his second as the full-time starter, but Jake started half the year in 2016 and did really well. So it's actually his third year. So that's not totally similar. And then of course Dylan Thompson was a first-year starter technically, although he had started in 2014. So it's not the quarterback situation is a little bit different, and that's where it all starts. LaNorris Sellers will be at SEC Media Days today, and I'm going to take a few moments to kind of talk about the three guys that are going and just some things that I've heard during the offseason about them. LaNorris is a hard worker, a very cerebral guy, and that's another thing that makes him a little bit rare as far as the combination of the mental approach to the game and also the just God-given natural athleticism and talent. Sometimes you have guys that have a lot of talent that can't quite get it mentally, and usually that doesn't come out until you get to the NFL. Just to be honest, because those offensive systems up there are so hard to process and stuff, and that's why you have a lot of great quarterbacks at the college level that you think are no-brainers. They'll do well in the NFL, and they don't. But it usually starts to get kind of exposed at that level, not necessarily in college. But LaNorris is really fast at processing information, as we saw last year when he basically got better in real time. He's just been one of those guys. The more he plays, the better he is. And I also think, based on last year, he's a guy that needs to play constantly. Yeah, I don't know that off weeks do him or downtime does him much good. And maybe I'm basing that too much on the bowl, but it did seem like he almost was overcompensating a little bit after the Clemson game where he would take off running quickly, almost like his clock was off in that one. Anyway, we don't need to talk about the Citrus Bowl. Let's move forward here, folks. Let's do that. I spent enough time talking about previous things. But he's worked exceptionally hard, especially in the passing game. I think he's got his legs. I think that, you look at I showed you guys the missile he launched at the Manning camp. No, it's against air with no pass rush. But that shows you what he can do, and you start thinking about it. And, what does South Carolina have at receiver, even, without looking at production or guys needing to get better and all the other things they're going to have speed, can run past guys. So it's good to have a guy with a rocket launcher on his right arm that when you got that kind of speed at receiver. So, I think I think a lot of people are under the impression South Carolina may go pass happy because Rocket Sanders isn't there anymore. And look, I'm going to say this. Rocket Sanders did not always get good blocking last year. But, I think with anybody, even if he were back to really get it going, run game wise, because if you notice, when Rocket got loose, he had blocking. And then when he didn't, he could make some yards on his own, of course, especially at the second level. But there were times he got stuffed at the line of scrimmage as well. So Carolina's got a block for whoever. And back to Seller, but I'm going to finish my point quickly on this. I think the thought is, well, Sellers will run and then they'll throw it all over the yard. I don't know. I think they're just trying to get to balance, to where this offense is good at everything. And you hear that term a lot in the offseason, everything schools, and all the stuff on social media or whatever, where oh, you're good at all the sports. Well, the offense needs to be an everything offense. It needs to be good at everything because guess what? When you're good at everything, you're very hard to defend. Most defensive coordinators go into what are they good at? Well, let's try to stop that and make them do things they're not good at. And then there's a certain percentage of plays. If you're not good at something, let's say the defense doesn't necessarily have to stop you. You're probably going to screw it up on your own. And that's why defensive coaches are like that. They go, well, what are they good at? Let's stop that and then see what they can do otherwise. But when you can do everything, and so the hope would be, South Carolina has a pretty formidable passing attack. The hope is that Nick Harbor comes along and becomes a player that's producing like his great potential is. That some freshmen like Brian Rowe, Donovan Murph, Malik Clark, whoever step up. That Bennett and Jacobs and Jared Brown all take a step forward. That Michael Smith at tight end really starts to play well. Jordan Dingle with more targets as well. Maurice Brown is a utility guy they can use. And then the backs, whether Rasul Faison's a guy or not, have room to run and they can make plays as well. I mean, Oscar Attaway, Jordan Howell, Isaiah Augustov. I'm going to say it like Gus Johnson. He said Augustov, so Augustov. Matthew Fuller, I think's a really good player as well. Those guys all have to, if it's not Faison, they all obviously have to step up. But, I think that when you look at it from that standpoint, that's what you want. And then Mike Shula can can be confident he can call plays, and they can execute and do well. And that's the goal. And LaNorris Sellers, when he has time and his fundamentals don't escape him, he's an accurate passer. He's also very good it got very good as the season went along at scrambling and keeping his eyes downfield and hitting the scramble play. And that's very lethal as well. So the hope is that you have that on offense, is you have the ability to have the scramble play, that LaNorris can run, and that you get average at least blocking up front. And there's really no reason why they shouldn't be better up front. All these guys that they've recruited that were big time recruits that are we're not just big time recruits that when you talk to people inside the program about them individually, it's not like they're like, well, we didn't get what we wanted there, or that's not a good player there, or all that. I mean, the feedback individually has been good. Of course, it takes five. And as we know from watching the 2024 Gamecocks and the 2023 Gamecocks and the 2022 Gamecocks and a lot of the teams around here, when you slow the tape down on the offensive line, it's one mistake. One guy making one mistake can destroy your whole play, destroy it. And so the hope is collectively they play better, and there's no reason why they can't. I know they lost three starters inside, and you're probably going to hear that a lot, but I think at the guards, there's a chance. No offense to Kamar Bell and Torricelli Simpkins. I've always liked Torricelli Simpkins, and he was kind of a feast or famine guy. I thought he was I thought he was the best, most consistent performer at guard, but I also thought there were some plays where he got stepped the wrong way or whatever. Go watch the Clemson tape. That was not his best day, Torricelli. But he's probably going to play pro ball and all that. So I thought he was fine. Bell had some good moments here and there. But, I mean, I thought the left side at times was not as good as it could be. But, Josiah Thompson is a sophomore. Casey Henry is going into his second year. You do have Tro Ball. They love Boaz Stanley individually, speaking of individuals. So that position should be better. But, if you say that around here, it all kind of goes back to before the 2016 season when Will Muschamp said the offensive line is going to be the strength of the team. And that was because Carolina had a lot of good players, a lot of players coming back on the offensive line, and they didn't have hardly anybody anywhere else. I mean, you're counting on freshmen, and I mean, AJ Turner was a redshirt look at that 2016 team, man. It was just until they put Bentley in and they got Rico healthy. it's basically the offense is basically just Hayden Hurst and whoever was playing okay that day. It's kind of that team winning 6 games was something else. Looking back, that Muschamps' first team and Beamer's first team getting to bowl games were, I mean, very good. And I'll say Spurrier's first team too. They were go back and look. They had some stars, absolute studs. But then if you look at the rest of that roster, boy, he pieced it. They've all pieced it together. I guess you do that in your first year. You piece it together, and everybody's happy. But yeah, like looking back on it, it's Muschamp said that, and then they weren't. And they weren't for the whole year. And, after Jake took over, the teams they could, I mean, even against Tennessee when they won that game, they gave up like 6 sacks. But, and then Clemson and Florida overwhelmed them up front. All Muschamp's recruits at Florida overwhelmed Carolina down in the swamp, and Clemson completely demolished them. But, your South Floridas and your Missouris that year and some other, when they could actually block a little, the offense did pretty well. So you look back, so he said that, and then everybody's disappointed. So every year since then, every single season, if you say anything good about the offensive line, nobody believes it. Or there's a subsection that doesn't. And look, after last year, and look, I'll say that 2023, they get a pass from me because I know the fans don't want to hear it, and some people think it's an excuse. But when the key, like I said this at the beginning of 2023, the key to the season for me was staying, like, number one, all those guys, Jalen Nichols, for example, that started up front. A lot of veterans. Vershawn Lee was part of that discussion. Ja'Kai Moore was part of that discussion at the time. Nick Gargiulo came in from Yale. I said they have to play the best football of their careers. Similar to the defensive line last year, and we know that one went the other way. That went positive. Well, they didn't, but they didn't have a chance. I mean, Jalen blows out his knee in the spring game. There's massive amounts of injuries. They had to play freshmen. And then by the end of the year, by the time they played Clemson, they had just been, I mean, they were coaches will tell you there's a difference between playing injured and playing hurt. They were all playing hurt, every single one of them. That's part of the reason that Clemson game did not go as well on offense as people would hope. And shout out to Mario Anderson that year too. D2 kid, right? I think he had 800 and something rushing yards behind that offensive line. He had some big runs that skewed it upward. But man, that's sort of impressive to me that he was able to do that. But that season gets a pass. Last year gets no pass. They were older, obviously, with 3 starters going. You did have a true freshman at left tackle, but it wasn't all him. I mean, I could live with Josiah Thompson's mistakes, and he made many. And so I don't know what happened last year, but allegedly, Shula's got a little plan to kind of streamline things for these guys. But I'm at this point, after last year, I've kind of come over to the side with, well, I don't know what to say about the offensive line until they do it. On paper, it looks like it could be a really good offensive line, but you don't play football games on paper, as we all know, and we'll all find out. I think from yesterday, there's 6 Sundays that we have to live through, God willing, and the creek don't rise, right? Until Carolina kicks it off against Virginia Tech. So we're going to find out at that point. But if they can at least get to average, because I think they were inconsistent and below average last year. Some good games for sure. Vanderbilt was a pretty good game. A&M was the best game of the year for the O-line. I mean, Raheem Sanders had a hole you could drive a truck through in that one against that defensive line with 3 NFL draft picks. Go figure. Anywho, I gotta quit saying anywho. That's just not me. I don't know how I've picked that up. Nevertheless, so the hope on offense is everything is better, particularly kind of the weak areas last year. I don't know that you can say running back will be better. they don't have a rocket, but not, I mean, who has 235-pound backs that run 4.37? I don't know. There's probably a few out there that do. But in the aggregate, if they can get blocking, they can produce. I mean, in Faison, and I'm probably folks in the minority on this, and I'll just admit it, and I may be wrong. I may be completely wrong. I do think Russell Faison's a hell of a player. I think Russell Faison can make a difference for this football team this year. I think Russell Faison is the running back one coming out of spring. I don't think it's the end of the football season. I don't think it's going to cost Carolina 4 wins. If he's not eligible, um, which I do believe he will be. I'm just saying some people are acting like the season is going to be over if he's not eligible, and I'm like, well, they got other backs. I mean, um, as far as the younger guys go, Fuller and Howell specifically, they've got all the talent in the world, but the mental side of the game for young players has to come. Isaiah Augustov and Oscar Attaway are a little older, although Isaiah's, got a couple more years. So they're capable as well. Attaway, I think, if you look at his last 2 games, if he can produce like that, there's going to be no problem. So I hope for Rasul's sake, and we had a big episode about that last week. Obviously, man, that's got a lot of comments and views. By the way, thank you. Like, subscribe, and share on the YouTube channel. I look at it, and it's important, but it's not. I don't necessarily believe it's, well, if he's eligible, Carolina's going to go to the playoff, and if he's not eligible, they'll be 7-6. I think other things will determine those scenarios this year outside of running back, if that makes sense. But the hope is that passing game, quarterback run game, scramble game, pass catchers, big play. You can see the path for this offense to be very good. But it starts with number 16, and he's going to be speaking at SEC Media Days today. Matt Anderson from the Late Night Gamecock Show, friend of mine, and Alex, they were talking. They did have a Late Night Gamecock Show this past week, so check that out here on Chief Sports. He mentioned that it's good he's going because kind of the start of the, I mean, if you want to talk Heisman campaign, I'll talk Heisman Trophy like, right up until June. I don't think it's good to talk about it in August and oh yeah, talk about Virginia Tech, but certainly, people know who LaNorris Sellers is, but they don't really know, and it's good media, and he's earned it. He's deserved it. I think he's put in some work this off season, done really well. Monster into last year, leader of the football team. And like I said, he's worked hard, passing game, working out, all that good stuff, to get ready. So I think if he can hold on to the football, because that is an issue, he can get his fundamentals right in the lower body, and he can kind of go out there and relax, which he did most of the time. I mean, you don't go up to Memorial Stadium with all that crowd and in a huge game and perform like you do if you're nervous. But holding the ball, that's key number one. Number two is the fundamental thing in the passing game. And number three, just play. Go out there and play. And one of the greatest things he said last year, I picked up on when he started to play well, he was in the media availability one week, and he kind of, without saying it was Nick Saban's process, he kind of just repeated what the process is with Nick Saban. The process is this, basically. You focus on the next play. You don't think about the last play. You don't think about the next play. You focus on the play at hand and doing that to the best of your ability. You don't focus on the scoreboard. You don't focus on outcomes. And you just play the next play. That's good advice for life as well. But that was Saban's whole thing. So I don't know who was responsible for, talking to him about that. He probably picked it up on his own because he's a highly intelligent individual. And that helps. And we know that that mental process has worked. It works. You know, you look at all the success Alabama had under Saban, both individual player wise and team wise. And that's something LaNorris does. So really special day, I think, for a kid from Florence, South Carolina to be on the stage he's on. I know a lot of people will talk about him. There'll be a ton of LaNorris Sellers coverage nationally. And of course, the bigspur.com, Hale and Alex spent the night in Atlanta tonight. Just schedule wise, Shane Beamer's meeting with the local media around 8:30, I believe. Could be some news coming from that. There sometimes is, sometimes isn't with these things through the years. And then he goes the radio room and all that. And then about 11:45, Beamer will have his big press conference in the big room. That's with the print media, print and electronic, and along with the players and all of that. I'm sure somebody will be on Feinbaum. SEC Network has you covered. Also, the bigspur.com. As I said, I'm doing an AMA there today for members. That's Ask Me Anything. Use code the show 50 to get half off an annual membership to enjoy all of the coverage, both free and VIP at thebigspur.com. Part of the 24/7 Sports Network. So very excited about SEC Media Days today. LaNorris Sellers, Shane Beamer, and the other two players going over there are from the defensive side of the ball. They're kind of old veterans. Nick Barrett, defensive tackle. Yeah, Beamer's bringing a defensive tackle. Who thought that? You know, he's a guy. He'll be going, and he's a guy that I've always really liked. You know, the Muschamp staff in their last class had got him committed out of Goldsboro, North Carolina. Eastern North Carolina is rich with defensive linemen. He's not like, you know, at the time, like, why did North Carolina not offer him, et cetera? They were kind of, we only want D tackles 6'3.5" and taller. Well, how did that work out? Anyway, so he didn't have a North Carolina offer, a little underrated, but another super highly intelligent guy, like an honors student and 4.2 GPA and all that good stuff. Well, you know, he stuck around under Beamer and played some. I mean, we all remember the interception in the 2022 Gator Bowl. That's a dream for a defensive tackle. And in that year, in 2020, he played about 320. So then I see him. Gosh, this was before last year, 2024, because he played some in 23, and he had slimmed down. Like, he was around. I saw him at the wing eating contest at CB 18, summer of 2024, and I was like, my God, he's the slimmest 330 I've ever seen. Well, then the roster and heights and weights come out. He's 308. And I'll be honest. I mean, and they ended up being able to redshirt him. He played some last year. In fact, unfortunately, the big run by McCoy for Illinois in the bowl. I said I wasn't going to talk about the Citrus Bowl, but I lied. The 60-yarder that kind of salted it away, he got blocked, pushed. And then Debo Williams got out of his gap. And so that's kind of a lasting memory. But I liked him better when he was 330, like a bigger guy, and he's back to up there now. And I think I said this before. I ended up finding some film of the spring game. Hale had been telling me about this, and I trust Hale, my Granahan. He knows what he's talking about, and Hale had been talking about Nick Barrett, Nick Barrett, Nick Barrett, Nick Barrett. And I was like, oh, really? You know, I was like, well, I did like him better at 330. He's healthy now. This is it. This is last year. And I look at, because the video on YouTube is kind of hard to look at numbers. It's a little grainy because it's from the stands. And I'm like, who's this guy flashing around like this? And I looked, and he turned his back, and I could see his numbers. Nick Barrett. I was like, oh, I see what people are talking about now. Noticeably quicker hands, has the weight, but is moving a lot better. And he's always been a strong kid. So look, I think one of three, Brownlow, Dindy, Nick Barrett, Monkel Goodwine, two of those three are going to start. But just like last year, after Jules kind of got hurt, it was Sanders and Huntley and Tonka rotating in. You know, I think it's safe to say Barrett, Goodwine, Brownlow, Dindy will be your top three. I think Troy Pikes, who's in from Georgia Southern, will slide into that fourth spot, barring a big push from Devontae Miles or Xavion Hardy or Christian Ingram, who's a true freshman, who, by the way, is listed at 6'6", 310 coming in. That's a big old dude. That's a 6'6", 310 is a longer armed person too. So, Nick Barrett's probably not on your list of people when we went in the offseason that you go, you kind of just think Nick Barrett's going to be Nick Barrett. Kind of like he's always been. Maybe he slides into the kind of the Boogie Huntley role or whatever. But from what I saw in that film from the spring game and the feedback I've gotten from Hale and from inside the program, yeah, I don't know that he's not one of those guys that just takes a step and has a big senior year. You think back, and I mentioned the 2011 to 2012 transition, so to speak, after the Gamecocks lost Melvin Ingram, Antonio Allen, and Stephon Gilmore off that 2011 defense. Didn't miss a beat. 2012 was a good defense too. You kind of look at it, and Byron Gerardo was a guy that was kind of like that. He was a guy they just kind of play every now and then in 11, and then in 12 he was a starter. So players do get better. Nick Barrett's been there a long time. He's kind of had some injuries. The weight has gone up and down, but like I said, I like 330-pound Nick Barrett, and I like what I saw in the spring game. So we'll see what happens with that. But certainly, uh, leadership wise and all that, that's kind of what Beamer looks at when he's taking guys to SEC Media Days. So I'm excited for Nick. And then DQ Smith is the other player. And DQ, I think on a defense with a lot of guys that made big plays. Speaking of the bowl game, the Gator Bowl a few years back, DQ did have a pick six in that one. And we've seen big plays from DQ Smith through the years. We just didn't see many last year. He started every game, played well, except for the Vanderbilt game where he was a late scratch, and Peyton Williams, who's probably going to start at the other safety, came in and played well. But DQ is a veteran. I think that as much as you can get lost in the shuffle last year, he maybe did. And didn't have you're back there with Nicky Manware, and you got Jelon Kilgore at nickel, and Fortune at corner, and Swain at corner, and Collier. Those guys, they make a ton of big plays, and so maybe the ball just didn't go his way. I don't know that coverage is man coverage has always been his strong suit, but he is a really good player. And Jamie Bradford, the host of Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, my partner here on Chief, and an all-around good guy. If you remember last year, his breakout guy was another guy that everybody kind of groaned about. I remember getting a call. Somebody was livid that Carolina did not go after a portal corner last season because they didn't like O'Donnell Fortune. Well, O'Donnell Fortune played really, really well last year and was robbed of 2 pick sixes. And the more I watch the Texas A&M tape, the more I don't think he stepped out of bounds. And played very well. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he makes a pro roster. Was disappointed he did not get drafted because that would have extended the cornerback streak of Gamecocks getting drafted. So there's precedent for kind of the guy that everybody's like, they kind of groan all off season for having a really good year. And Jamie Bradford, like I said, this is his breakout players. DQ Smith, last year's breakout player, was O'Donnell Fortune. He said this about DQ after watching the spring game. DQ has a really good year. Columbia guy, high school quarterback, Spring Valley, one of the few. Gosh, he may be the first Spring Valley guy. Shout out John Whittle, Spring Valley Viking graduate. Since Marty Simpson, I don't know. Somebody in the comments tell me if there's been a Spring Valley product that has worked out, that has picked Carolina. Most of them don't, and worked out well for the Gamecocks since Marty Simpson. Was he from Marty Simpson? I think he was. Or was he from Irmo? Gosh, my mind. Marty Simpson was a long time ago. Stand-up comedian now. So he was a kicker. So I don't know how far you got to go back for a position player from Spring Valley, but Spring Valley High School was a quarterback. there. They moved him to safety, and he made, I mean, gosh, first play of his first game of his career on a block punt, scored a touchdown against Georgia State in the 2022 opener. So DQ Smith will be there, and those are the three at SEC Media Days. Like I said, Shane Beamer's meeting with the media around 8. So if you're listening to this podcast after 8, I'm sorry, 8:30. I think it's SEC Radio at 8. I saw his schedule earlier today. So check that out. There could be some news. Check out thebigspur.com. Also, Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show will be at 10. We'll be at 10 today. Mike Morgan, Jamie Bradford in all day. Just the two of them. SEC Media Days. Boom, boom, boom. Mike's great with stuff like this. And so, and then John Strickland and Mike will be in tomorrow. I think Wednesday they got John Whittle. Phil Steele is on JC and Morgan with Mike and I on Wednesday. Programming note there. So what the morning show will do today is 11:45. They're going to cut and get out for Beamer and his presser. And then normally it's going to continue to be a super stream, one big stream for both shows. Today we're going to do two though, because we're going to allow for time for, you don't want to hear from us when Shane Beamer's giving his state of Gamecock football at the SEC Media Days, right? And so Phil and I will be back. We estimate it's like 12:15, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. Who knows? With Inside the Gamecocks to show as we start our 4th season of Inside the Gamecocks, which is crazy, but it is. So 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Yeah, man, oh man, what a deal. So it's that. So recruiting, there is recruiting. I saved that for last. Save the best for last. Carolina lost out on JB Shabazz to Tennessee. That situation was interesting, to say the least. I'll just say this: we do have to keep in mind these people. They're human beings. Human beings have families. Families have different things they prioritize in these situations. I don't blame anybody for doing right by their family. I just, you man, chalk that one up to if there weren't whatever's going on around college football going on. And look, I don't want to vilify Tennessee here. I don't think Tennessee really bought the guy or anything like that. I just think maybe they put a little more value on him than maybe Carolina did financially, and with their, I don't want to vilify them and make, well, you bought him or whatever. I mean, that's you can do that these days, but if you're South Carolina and high school offensive linemen, 55% of the time they work out on average, and you got demands and. You've got a lot of guys on that offensive line that are going to return in 2026 that they're currently there. Big Tree, Trevon Ball, Josiah Thompson, Casey Henry has another year, Jatavis Shivers. You've got the younger guys that are in the program. I mean, you kind of blow your load on something that is 55% of the way. It's like going to Vegas. I mean, I almost think strategically sometimes it's smart to let somebody else swallow it and take that gamble that you compete against, and you go with your guys. So that was a sad one in a way, because I think in his heart he really wanted to go to Carolina, and I feel bad for that kid in that regard. But I don't feel bad for him because he picked Tennessee, and his agent and his parents and him, they're happy with the decision. So I don't. I feel bad just from a standpoint of in life you make decisions for different reasons, and when you're young, they tell you young people should follow their heart. And I think that's true to a certain extent. Sometimes young people follow their heart and they have to kind of go to plan B. There's no question about it. But, young people making business decisions based on, I don't know, at this age, I don't know, because then you always wonder. I mean, so Samari Matthews went to Texas as expected. We'll see if that holds. I will say this with Samari, or Smoke as they call him. Um, whatever Texas is doing to fulfill their promise to him, I don't know how. Everybody else must be taking a discount to pay for the Longhorns, play for the Longhorns, but I guess they have a way. And like I've said, everybody in college football now, it's up to their administration, including at South Carolina, to figure out revenue streams and a way to supplement the cap and with real NIL. So maybe out in Austin they have a plan. So who knows? I'll say this: his decision was not just about money. It was, he did like Texas. I mean, I was told he was enamored by that program, but I've also been told that, he's been in contact with a lot of other schools that were previously thought to be eliminated. So we'll see if it holds. I don't necessarily know that that's a potential flip, but we'll see what happens. It's going to get interesting with a lot of guys around the country come August 1st when things can be put into writing. Tamarian Watkins announces today. You guys know that's my favorite recruit. Looks better for South Carolina, I would think. There's been a lot of honest conversations with him. Uh, Even if he does commit to Texas A&M, and I'll tell you the quote. I checked with a contact in the Rock Hill area and said, "Well, he's like, I'm not a betting man, but I will give you $10,000 if this guy leaves, ultimately plays anywhere but Carolina." So it may be that he commits to A&M and then he's like Malik Clark and a flip candidate or whatever. I don't know. Uh, I I wish this was like a Noah Clark and a as expected, but it's not because I love Tamarian Watkins and you guys know that. But we'll see. We'll have coverage of that. And then Kamari Blair has kind of popped back on the radar after Shabazz, Clarksville, Tennessee offensive tackle that visited way back when. And I got to check with my guy, my Blair guy. But, and I'll say this, if Carolina can get Kamari Blair out of the state of Tennessee, I don't know. And I love Shabazz as a player. Don't get me wrong. And if Carolina had gotten both, I would say the same thing. I don't know that Blair doesn't have more upside. He's more raw right now. But this guy, there's something about him on film that if he works and develops, and again, 55% high school offensive lineman, then Carolina could be in pretty good shape comparatively with this guy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing his senior film to see, because some of the raw things are based on junior film. What's he going to do as a senior up there in Clarksville, Tennessee? So I know his mother really loved the visit to South Carolina. Kamari Blair, 4-star offensive tackle. So he's deciding Wednesday, I believe. If I'm wrong, check thebigspur.com. And you don't even have to be a member. Just go to his profile and it has his commitment countdown clock on that on 24/7 Sports. So that's what's left in recruiting. Darius Gray, Landon Duckworth have decisions coming up. Or, I'm sorry, Landon Duckworth has a scheduled decision coming up. Darius Gray released a top 5. Carolina was in it. I think Carolina's got a pretty good shot there, but we'll see what happens at the end of the day with the 5-star offensive guard from Richmond, Virginia. All right, that's a pretty solid coffee, folks. It's back. Football is back. We survived the off season. So yeah, you got to get through this week. This week's fun, piece of cake. Then you got like 3 weeks of slog where it's back to the reality that it's still July. Then practice starts and we got a lot of football to talk about. There's some recruiting announcements coming up and all that good stuff to keep up with and all that happiness. So, okay, shout out to everybody. Be sure to check out the morning show starting at 10. And being Phil will be along after Beamer. JC Shurburtt's coffee has concluded. Holla.